Good morning everyone and welcome to this meeting of Mid-Suffolk District Council Cabinet. I'm Councillor Andy Mellon, leader of Mid-Suffolk District Council, and I will be chairing this meeting. And I'll first just go through some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that your microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers. If you're attending to the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. And additionally, we will be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app, so please can Cabinet members sign in to that. I'd also like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items, and we do have one of those today. If you make a representation to the meeting, you'll be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. Also, just to remind you that the Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. But if you are intending to do that, please can you inform the committee clerk. Having gone through those domestic arrangements, I will move to the agenda. Item 1 is apologies for absence.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Item 2 is to receive declarations of pecuniary, other registrable or non-registrable interest by members, and I'll start by just saying that I am the County Councillor for Elmsall and Woolpit, and there's an item relating to that on the agenda. Are there any others to declare? None? Thank you. Item 3 is paper MCA/25/1 to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of May 2025. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? If not, can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Winch, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Stringer. And the Governance Officer will now conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Councillor Pearson, do you want me to take your vote verbally? Do you want me to take your vote verbally as well? Thank you, Chair. That's 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. So we move on to item 4, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Item 5, questions by councillors.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Item 6, matters referred by the Overview and Scrutiny or Joint Audit and Standards Committees.
No matters referred, Chair.
Thank you. Item 7 is the forthcoming decisions list, which I'm sure we've all had a look at. Are there any comments or queries on the forthcoming decisions list? Councillor Pearson.
Thank you. Yes, I looked at the list. I just wondered why the item that we have on the agenda today is not listed as a key decision. Looking at the debt item.
Sorry, which item are we?
Sorry, let me just find my notes. The debt write-off.
Not sure. Can anyone ask?
Debt write-off.
Apparently it is on the list there somewhere.
It is.
We're just checking that. It certainly should be on the list. It's on there, okay. Apparently it is on the list.
As a key decision.
We'll just take a couple of minutes just to discuss that. I'm just going to ask the monitoring officer just to give us a brief explanation of what we need to do to get this item through.
So the item has been listed on your forthcoming decisions list for a clear 28 days, but it appears we can't be confident that it has been listed as a key decision for 28 days. Therefore, you can take the item today, make a decision. We will come up with some words to amend the recommendation so that you then delegate to Arthur to take as an urgent key decision outside of the meeting, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it has been in the public domain for a clear period, it just hasn't been listed. It may or may not, we can't be confident that it's been listed as a key decision throughout that period.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pearson, for spotting that. Any further questions on the forthcoming decisions list? Okay, if not, we will move on to item 8, which is paper MCA/25/2. This is the Community Infrastructure Levy, the SIL Expenditure Programme for June 2025, and we have officers there from the SIL team, and we also have Carl Ashton, who's the Suffolk County Council Transport Planning Manager, who's come along to support one of the items. So I'll now ask the Cabinet Member for Heritage Planning and Infrastructure to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. These are your normal reports, which contain a recommendation under paragraph 3.1 to support 3 different infrastructure projects with district SIL monies. The first SIL bid is a walking and cycling bid to link Elmswell with Woolpit. This SIL bid is quite unique. It's been under the development for a number of years, with the project being listed within both Suffolk County Council's local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, as well as Mid-Suffolk's local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, as a key part of sustainable active travel infrastructure that's required in the district. It represents a major piece of infrastructure that will ensure safety of those using that route, at the same time as promoting the use of sustainable forms of transport. This project will link two villages which share key services and infrastructure in a sustainable way, providing an alternative form of transport instead of the use of private motor vehicles, reducing the barriers and costs to local residents to access key service facilities such as Elmsall Railway Station, Woolpit Medical Centre, Woolpit Business Park, village halls and sports facilities. Due to Elmsall Primary School nearing capacity, Woolpit Primary School will be providing some school places for some Elmsall children in the future. It is therefore essential for a safe walking and cycling route be built between the two villages. Parts of this route have already been provided by developers through direct provision. These parts in Elmsall are around the new roundabout in Woolpit and are included as part of this route. A further section around the new Woolpit roundabout and leading into Woolpit village will be provided by Highways using an additional £300,000 of local transport plan monies. The following key benefits for Elmsall and Woolpit are a better, safer, active travel connection between these two communities, increased transport options for people travelling between these villages, provide opportunities for younger people to be more independent in their travel between the villages, help reduce congestion on the local roads and therefore improve air quality, help to improve the health and well-being of those that walk, wheel or cycle between those villages. The funding for this scheme for the two villages will come from the ring-fence infrastructure plans for both villages, £1 million a piece of just under the 1.1 from a strategic infrastructure fund to meet local eligibility costs of £3,099,930.16p. We have Carl Ashton, as the chairman said, here today to ask any questions if you have them, and it should hopefully be able to do that for you. National Highways are providing a final improvement agreement to the design and the section of the route that includes the A14 overbridge. A further section around the new Woolpit roundabout and leading into Woolpit will be provided by Highways using an additional £300,000 of local transport plan monies. Dedication of the land that is part of the route but not currently owned by Highways and which would need to be designated as part of the public highway. An appropriate mechanism between Mid-Suffolk District Council and Suffolk County Council needs to be agreed and secured to enable the forward funding of this project using district seal funding with relevant commitments from Suffolk County Council to secure timely recovery of this forward funding through, but not limited to, Section 106 contributions in relation to the future growth proposals in both villages, with reimbursement of those district seal funds against any future growth in both villages via Section 106 agreements. This latter has been agreed in principle Suffolk County Council and would need to be reinforced by securing an appropriate mechanism between those both councils. A programme will be devised of implementing regular meetings, probably monthly, by SCC with all stakeholders in this project as to keep everyone updated on design costs and delivery timescales, etc. The second seal bid we're looking at in this proposal is slightly simpler. It's £33,750 for heating and lighting project in Rattleston Church, where the village hall is at full capacity of use, and making a positive and warmer environment in the church will allow that church to be used for more community use and therefore better supporting the village hall and the community. The third seal bid is at Needham Market Football Ground and represents an upgrade of a new stand and improvements. The district seal ask is £100,000 and represents 47.5% of the total project costs. So just in conclusion, I move the recommendation under 3.1, I believe, and 3.2 in the report, and look for a seconder, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Davis, thank you. So, any questions from Cabinet members initially on this item? Councillor Winch.
Can I just make sure I understand the time scale bit of this problem for the Woolpit Elmswell footpath, which is really brilliant to see this coming forward. But in the paper it says Suffolk County Council are expecting to start work on the route before the end of 25-26 financial year and expect the project to take between 16 and 20 weeks to complete, which means it should be complete by the end of 2026. What is there that when we're giving this funding that is sort of tying that time scale in? I'm not clear on that. And I thought when we had a cabinet briefing there was going to be some conditions on this to try and ensure that timescale was achieved. That's question number one. And question number two, linked to it from an operational point of view, how risky do you think the timescale is anyway, and are you fairly confident that can be achieved?
Who'd like to take that question? Carl, are you going to answer that? Thank you.
I'll start, please. Yeah, Christine may need to chip in as well. So the timescales that have been outlined in the reports are based on our bid information that we submitted in October last year. That was on the expectation that approval funding would come from SIL in February. So we are a little bit behind the curve in terms of that timescale at this moment in time. We have been working with the SIL, with the Section 106 funding that we've got, to progress the design as far as possible. And if you know the area, you will have seen around the new year we removed a lot of the vegetation in preparation for the route. And at the time the bid was submitted, we were hopeful of being on site building this financial year. We will still endeavour to try and do that, but given the slight delay in getting the funding approved, we may have lost some time on that. So I don't want to be committed on delivering it in 25, 26, but I would expect us to be working on site either towards the end of this financial year or very early next financial year.
Councillor Winch.
Well, the first part of the question is there anything we can do in voting this through that conditions this in any way, or am I going down a rabbit hole?
Thank you. Because there is further design work to do to address some of the apparatus that may be under the ground that hasn't yet been detected, we decided the best thing to do was not to impose or recommend an imposition of a time scale, but to recommend, and Councillor Stringer has done this, included a recommendation about a monthly programme update to all the community, in order to allow everybody that is involved in this project to understand what the timescales are and how quickly this can be delivered.
Thank you. Any other questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Penny.
Delivered, would it be in a process according with the development as it takes place, or would they all be released immediately?
So when SIL bids go forward for implementation, we offer a staged payment arrangement that we agree with the SIL bidder, or we can do a final payment at the end. Actually, we haven't discussed that in detail yet with Carl and his team, but you know, we are open to both of those in order to support the project going forward.
Any other questions from Cabinet members? If not, there's one from me. There's an advisory standard for cycleways, which is LTM 120. I've had some concerns expressed by residents about the footway or the cycleway being right next to the road on Church Hill, whereas I think LTM 120 would indicate a potential separation with a small section of verge between the actual highway and the cycle path. Is that something we're going to be able to achieve?
We're still looking at the detailed design at the moment, but I would expect that what we build here will be LTM 120 compliant. It's important for us as the Highway Authority to be building infrastructure that is suitable for its use. LTM 120 is the national design standards, if you like, for walking and cycling, so we will be doing our very best to achieve something that is compliant.
Okay, thank you, that's great. The second question then is, part of the section is currently in the ownership of Sustrans. I understand that they have a standard of 3 metres wide for cycleways. So the section down Church Hill which they own, would they be prepared to sign it over to this project if that 3 metre width is not achieved on that section?
So Sustrans own a 3 metre strip that is from the edge of the existing carriageway So the new route will be within the existing carriageway. We have already made contact with the landowner adjacent and have met him on site to discuss that exact point, because we are keen to make sure that it's LTM 120 compliant. We believe, based on the design information we've got at the moment, that we can achieve that, although that because of the levels the road drops away quite quickly. So what we're looking to do is potentially recreate a bank within the landowners, with the landowner's permission, to make sure that the route is 3 metre wide through that section.
Okay, that's really good news. Thank you. Anything else from Cabinet members? If not, any other questions from members present? Councillor Scarf first.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I start by saying I really welcome the project. I think it's a fantastic project, long overdue. But I do have sort of some concerns. How do we fund any potential unknowns? With a project this sort of size, there is always potential unknowns. That's the first one. And note that Suffolk County Council is still chasing National Highways approval. Are they confident that they're going to get that imminently? Because I think we all fear about negotiating with a national body. And this is a rather unusual SIL project in that not everything is oven ready. So perhaps we could seek some clarity on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there is a contingency in the finances, which I'm sure officers will be able to confirm. Carl, do you want to take that?
Yeah, when we put our bid in, we have allowed quite a healthy contingency, to be honest, and we've also allowed quite a bit of funding to redivert any underground services that Christine referred to as well. I'm hopeful that we may not need to do that, but we have allowed for sort of almost worst case scenario with regards to the funding that we've asked for. We have had some positive dialogue with National Highways. There is a process that we will have to jump through a hoop to get their approval to do the works over the bridge, but I'm very confident that we will get that. It's more a case of we need to get the detailed design work complete for that process to happen, but I'm confident, it won't be imminent as you referred to, but we will get approval in place before we start works.
Thank you. Just to add to that, so if you're familiar with the bridge, there is room next to the highway for a cycle path. The concern there is the height of the bridge parapet. So they've got to provide a sort of an engineering solution so that people don't fall off their bikes over onto the A14, which nobody wants to happen. So when we get that, will be a bit clearer. Councillor Mansell, did you have a question?
This isn't really a question, but I'm here as one of the ward members for Elmswell and Woolpit, and I really want to just offer my support for this, unique SIL bid. Really, it's the first of its kind. It's absolutely fantastic that we are here, probably about 30 years too late. This project has been a bit of a pipe dream, I guess, all the time I've ever lived in Elmswell. When Sustrans bought the strip of land, people were hopeful, and that must have been about well over 25 years ago. And people have sort of almost given up hope of it ever happening. So I'm really excited that we are now in a position where this actually might come to fruition in the next couple of years. There are so many shared services between the two villages of Elmswell and Woolpit. Woolpit has got the surgery, Elmswell's got the station. Both villages have grown incredibly in the last 5 or 6 years and are probably going to grow again. And there is more and more discussion. You see it on the social media, people in Woolpit saying, how do I walk to Elmswell station? Because they're new to the area, they don't know the way, and it is not safe trying to walk across that bridge. I have tried walking to Woolpit, it's horrible. Cycling to Woolpit is tolerable, but not now they've got the new infamous EG on the move service area and those delightful little red posts in the middle of the highway. So if something wants to overtake you, they push you into the verge. So it's more and more important that this path does actually get built. We are here today, the whole country, as well as Mid-Suffolk, want to get modal shift away from using the car. So it really is a vital link between these two villages. And I'd also just like to comment that I'm really pleased that not all of the money from the SIL is coming out of the ring-fenced funds. Clearly, this is going to benefit Elmswell and Woolpit, and we're getting it because of the development that's been in those two villages. But I'm also really pleased that some of it is coming from the strategic fund, because this certainly is a strategic project, and I'm hoping that it will, pave the way for more big cycle infrastructure projects across the district. I think this might be the first of its kind. And I'm also really pleased that the route that we're now going to have goes behind Elmswell Church. At one time, there was talk about it going in the front, and I think it will actually be quite a scenic path. I know it's a bit of a hill, and I think there's a little bit of a wiggle being designed in to make the gradient slightly less. But I'm really excited and really looking forward to being able to use this path. So I do hope that you are going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mansell. Any questions from you, John?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's more of a concern than a question, but perhaps either the Cabinet member or the officers might like to comment on my concern. This footpath clearly is needed between Elmswell and Woolpit, but the one project is costing 89% of the total spend here. For the same amount of spent on the footpath, you could actually build 10 football stands or heat 100 churches. And I noted it was mentioned, well, it's described firstly as a unique venture, but that was changed now to one of the first of its kind. Back in last September, we reported to our parish councils that there were about 130 actions on the LC whip, which was stalled, but we were trying to speed up the design work on 70 plus. So I think it begs the question, how much of Sill is going to be swallowed up by footpaths and cycle paths if this is the first of its kind, and these sort of things cost £3 million each?
Yeah, thank you. Fair question. Councillor Stringer.
I share the concern that if we have many similar, it will swallow up an awful lot of money. That's why it's really important that we have inventive uses of that Sill pot, and this is one of them. There are clawbacks in here for future development. So basically what we're doing, we're almost paying it forward. But it comes to the point, and this is where I pay testament to our officers on all councils for working this up, in that we simply cannot wait for some of this stuff until every single penny is in the correct pot. This has to be done. It simply has to be done. And that's why I pay tribute to the officers for having that forward thinking about how can we make this happen. Yes, it may not be quite perfect, but equally, as those funds are paid back from future development, then we can then roll out more of those schemes that we've paid forward to. So actually, this is almost an investment in being able to roll out further schemes like this in the future. So, and equally, I think, we're discussing now with parishes about having extra development, aren't we, across the piece. The first thing a community normally says is, what about the infrastructure? And if they see that we're being bold, and there is a risk here, but we are using every endeavour to bring forward that infrastructure that many thought would never ever happen, I think it will help in terms of that confidence in our communities that we can get that infrastructure for you, and it won't just be that pipe dream. It'll be something that one day you'll walk over or cycle over.
Any further questions on this item? If not, we can open up for debate. I think we're possibly already in a bit of a debate situation, but that's fine. Who'd like to contribute to the debate? Councillor Winch.
Yeah, I think Councillor Mansell's really covered the Woolpit and Elmswell footpath. It is a lot of money, but I think it's something that will have a generational impact. It's something people are going to look back on in decades later and say this was a really sensible thing to do. Elmswell and Woolpit are actually a significant part of the district's total population. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's not an insignificant size of community either. I also just want to mention the Rattlesden Church Warmth Project and the Needham Market Football Club Award, which in itself is a very significant award, so we shouldn't forget those. They've slightly been outshadowed by the fact that this is such a huge Sill bid. So I'm really pleased to see all three of these come forward. and the Woolpit Elmswell footpath. Brilliant to see that going forward, and I look forward to it being completed roughly by the end of 2026. That's what I hope.
Anyone else? If not, I'll say a few words from the chair. Obviously, this is in my county council division, so it's close to my heart in terms of getting this delivered. Just to point out, we already do have a section of this path already in place, which was delivered by the developer along School Road, and I can report that that path is very well used already. And when you have the connection further around the back of the church and down to the roundabout and to Woolpit, I'm sure the whole length of it will be very, very well used because of the connections between the two communities. And not only that, there's also work going on at the moment to extend some of the paths in Elmswell under the Public Rights of Way team, and also Network Rail have started work finally on the path to the north of the railway, connecting from the old bacon factory site down to Parnell Lane, which also connects into the existing path. So there's an emerging network of walking, cycling and wheeling routes around Elmswell, which I think are going to be very, very much welcomed by the community there, and I'm sure will be very well used. There is a concern about the price of this, but as Carl's pointed out, there's a sizable contingency which could, I guess, be recovered if it's not used to move services and that sort of thing. And the good thing is that the county council is also putting in some money to extend the route into further into Woolpit along Heath Road. So I'm very happy that we make a decision to approve this, and we do need to just amend the recommendations. I'm going to ask the officers to put the amended recommendation up on the screen for us to see. So this is an amendment to the second paragraph of 3.1, just to flesh out some of the details there. I hope it's big enough for people to read. Just give us a moment just to read the amended recommendations there. So although there's some more detail in the recommendations, the actual seal bid, the price has not changed from what's in the papers. And then we've got the further recommendations on Rattleston and Needham Market as well. But if everyone's content with these amended recommendations, I will now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That's 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the officers. Thank you, Carl, for coming in for that item. And look forward to seeing the delivery of these pieces of infrastructure. So we're going to move on to item 9, which is paper MCA/25/3. This is the General Fund Financial Monitoring 24-25, Quarter 4 Outturn. And I'm just looking around to see, we've got Melissa Evans, Director of Finance and Procurement, and Sean Coulter, the Senior Finance Business Partner, to support this item. And I will now invite the Cabinet Member for Finance Resources, Councillor Pearson, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. This is the report that presents the fourth quarter outturn for the 2024-25 year for the General Fund. I'll start at the bottom of the report and talk about the capital programme. The budget for the year was £10.8 million and the actual spend was £6.5 million. There's a total of 4.6 million, which is carried forward to the current year, wasn't spent in the previous year. And some of the major elements of this in round terms are 2 replacement refuse freighters for 400,000, SIL infrastructure grants of £400,000, year to 31st March 25. The report gives comparison with the agreed budget for the year and also with the forecasts for the year, which were presented at the end of the third quarter. Forecasts are prepared at the end of each quarter, and the first quarter came to us in October last year, the second quarter in December, and the third quarter in March this year. The format of the presentation changed partway through the year, and it's fair to say that the results and forecasts at each quarter did show some significant variances, both in comparison with the budget and between quarterly forecasts. This final quarter is no exception, and the surplus, which had been increasing with each quarterly forecast, has now dropped significantly to a level closer to the original budget. The reason for this is that there was a business rate levy which was due for payment, which was omitted from the previous forecasts, and this was an error which was identified very recently. As you'll see from this report, there's a significant overspend against budget in the finance department for the year. It's £426,000, which is set out on page 5 of the report. This is due in large part to the cost of bringing in temporary staff. The department has been struggling throughout the year with understaffing and the need to use temporary staff, sometimes with a lack of really good relevant experience to fill gaps, and at the same time they were putting in a new accounting system. All of this put a great deal of pressure on the Director of Finance, Melissa, and I commend her on the way that she kept things going despite the difficulties. Things started to turn at the end of last year when the Head of Finance, David, joined the department, taking up a position that had previously been vacant. He rapidly became fully aware of the problems with both staffing and the fact that processes and procedures being followed were not always sufficiently robust to enable errors to be identified at the correct time. It is, of course, true that everybody makes a mistake from time to time, but it's vital that systems design acknowledges this and ensures that checks and balances identify mistakes at an early stage. David has assured me, and therefore all of us, that work is currently underway and in fact was started before this recent error was identified, to streamline and standardise the month-end procedure so that the Unit 4 system is used to produce reports without manual adjustment or intervention. This will greatly reduce the potential for error and will also free up time for scrutiny and oversight of the reports produced for a final review of reasonableness. At the same time, David is leading a recruitment drive to bring in permanent staff with high quality experience and thus eliminate the high level of use of temporary staff. I believe these actions will ensure that the potential for errors in the future will be greatly reduced. I'd like to say they'd be eliminated, but we have to accept nothing's ever perfect. Moving on to the report itself, There's detailed explanation of the variances within the net cost of services on pages 5 to 7 or 91 to 93 of the agenda. So I won't take up time talking through those now. The overall position is that the net cost of services shows a favourable outturn of 1.7 million as compared to original budget. This is primarily due to a reduction in interest payable on short-term borrowings of £1 million and to interest receivable on short-term investments of £900,000. Interest receivable was not included in the original budget. This favourable figure on cost of services is counteracted by the reduction in funding, which is due of 1.2 million, which is due to the business rate error that I've referred to. The end result is therefore an increase to the surplus for the year from the figure of 5.2 million in the original budget to 5.7 million in the actual outturn. This is an increase of £491,000, and it's perhaps worth pointing out that it encompasses a loss of £498,000 arising from the closure of the UBS pooled fund, an event which was beyond the control of anyone in the council. Without that event, the outcome for the year would have been improvement to the surplus of just under £1 million, £989,000. I need to draw your attention to the fact that the table papers amend the recommendations set out in the report itself. The revised recommendations are that both the surplus for the year and the £20 million dividend received from Gateway 14 are transferred to the Mid-Suffolk Plan Implementation Reserve. I would like to propose that we approve these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Winch. Any questions from members on this report? Councillor Winch.
Can we just 100% clarify that the issue on business rates doesn't impact the budget for the this year numbers and doesn't impact the medium-term financial plan going forward?
Thank you. Yes, we have discussed this, and my understanding is that it has no impact on this current year or going forward. But I don't know if...
Sorry. Any further questions from Cabinet members? If not, John, Keith, do you have any questions? John.
On page 90, under service expenditure, we've got employee costs basically on line with budget, but premises costs have gone up from 1.337 million to, get it right, 2.206 million. Yet when we look at the analysis on pages 91 to 93, there's plenty of talk about employee cost savings, but nowhere do I see anywhere talking about the premises cost overruns.
Okay. Who'd like to take that question? Melissa? Thank you.
I'm just trying to find the relevant section in that. I think from memory, and I've just checked with Sean, I think it's related to the PV panel income. So I'm just looking for the right section in the appendix, and I can't find it at the top of my head at the moment. Yeah, I think it's under strategic property, but you on page 93, but you won't actually see it broken down in there because that's the net expenditure, if you like, on that line. What we can do is provide a detailed breakdown that shows what the property variance is broken up by, if that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. It's just, yeah, the 869,000 seems to be a big number, whereas it does, you know, the explanation of strategic property just seems to have quite a few smaller numbers. So. But my second question actually has been trumped by the revised papers, which I hadn't actually realised had come out, because I was going to ask why 20 million was being added to the Skills and Innovation Centre reserve of 7.894 million to make a total of 27.894 million, but I assume the Skills and Innovation Centre reserve at 7.8 million is an adequate amount. Is that right?
Sorry, do we just need to clarify that?
My understanding is that, yes, it is certainly the recommendation is that the 20 million dividend goes into the Mid-Suffolk Implementation Plan Reserve, Mid-Suffolk Plan Implementation Reserve, not the Skills and Innovation Centre.
I was just wondering what first triggered the thought that it might go there, you know, was it?
That I can't answer, I'm afraid, because it was in the 2025-26 budget, it was actually going into the Mid-Suffolk Reserve.
Final question for me on page 94, which is to do with the reserves. Down the bottom of those reserves, there's a installation project reserve brackets Cosy Homes. So it started in April 24 at 2 million. It was decided to bump that up to 4 million, but only 80,000, which is 2%, has actually been spent by the end of the year. So I'm just intrigued as to, you know, the story behind that, because it seems more like a cosy reserve rather than a cosy home reserve.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your question.
Well, my question is, in terms of the reserve, which is called the Installation Project Reserves bracket Cosy Homes, the fact it's gone up from 2 million to 4 million in the year, but only 80,000, which is 2%, has been spent. I wondered what the story was behind that, in terms of, you know, why that reserve is as it is.
You're referring to, yeah. That is a project which has been pushed forward again this year. It was slow to get moving, I believe.
There's two different things. I actually don't understand that 4 million figure, so I think we're going to need to take that away and have a look at it. In terms of the Cosy Homes, the story is we did have a very slow start-up. The figures are now looking a lot better, so I'm expecting that budget to get used a lot quicker in this financial year. But the 4 million number we need to have a look at. Good spot.
Yeah, as far as I understand it, one of the reasons there's been an underspend or a low spend on that is because the people have been able to come forward and have been able to take advantage of other schemes which are not in this budget but were still insulation schemes. So some potential beneficiaries have gained from other schemes that the contractor was delivering. Any further questions before we move to debate? Okay, well, we'll now open this item up for debate. Thank Councillor Pearson for her introduction. Any further comments or questions or debate on this item? Councillor Winch.
A couple of things. I won't go over any of the ground that Councillor Pearson has, but I think, you know, a final result of surplus of 5.7 million versus 5.2 million is still a really good position, and it's a position that a lot of councils would be really keen to have. So we just need to put that into perspective. I think we feel that the strengthening of the finance team is really important, but we're seeing all the right actions being put into place. So we think that that issue is going to be resolved. A couple of more general things. We've talked before about the fact that the balance sheet items don't appear in any of the financial reporting for the council. And given that we're about to, in another paper, do a write-off of a significant amount, it would be useful if everybody could see some of those balance sheet items, and I don't know how that works, but maybe an appendix in this. And the other thing, I'm going a little bit more off at a tangent, but I think we need to relook at our medium-term financial plan, because there's a lot of things floating around. So we've had this end-of-year change, which is a significant amount of money, but we've got other things like the depot project, temporary accommodation, Shelf 2, purchase of land, impact of Mid-Suffolk growth, a lot of other things moving around that we probably need to have a look at. What does our medium-term plan look like now? But I'd like to thank officers for all the work that they're doing. I'm, as somebody new to local government finance, a £20 million organisation sounds like it ought to be simple, but local government finance is a lot more complicated than I realised before. So thanks to all the officers for their hard work.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. Anyone else? Okay, if not, we will. I'll just read out the recommendations. Now, these are in the table papers. We've got 3.1 to approve the transfer of the surplus in the financial year of 5.7 million to the Mid-Suffolk Plan Implementation Reserve. 3.2 to approve the transfer of the £20 million dividend from Gateway 14 to the Mid-Suffolk Plan Implementation Reserve. Now, can I just check? 3.3 has dropped off the recommendations. Is that's no longer relevant? Is that correct? That's the one about the carry forward of the capital programme.
I think that still needs to be in there, to be honest.
Okay,
I think that's been missed.
So 3.1 and 3.2 are amended, and then 3.3 is to carry forward the 4.6 million from the 24-25 capital programme to the 25-26 programme. So we have got three recommendations there, two amended and one as in the original papers. So I will now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That's 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you. So that item is carried. Thank you. And we move on to item 10. This is paper MCA/25/4, the Housing Revenue Account Financial Monitoring 24-25, Quarter 4 Outturn. And we also have same officers here for this item. Oh, and Jenny's there as well. Sorry, I didn't spoil. I need a pair of binoculars from up here to be able to see everybody, I think. But Jenny Smithies, who's the Senior HRA Finance Business Partner, is also here. So I'll now invite the Cabinet Member for Financial Resources to introduce the report. Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Chair. Right, before discussing the report, I should point out that the tabled papers contain two amendments to the report. The first amendment is the wording of section 4.6 of the report, it removes reference to the use of reserves and the need to take care on that because things have changed around. And the second is a revised table of the HRA outturn, which replaces the table on page 113 of the report. So talking about the report itself, we all know the problems of the HRA account and the historical reasons for those, and so I'm not proposing to go into that again today. The budget set for the 2024-25 year showed a deficit of £969,000, which was to be covered by reserves. The first quarter forecast showed the budget holding at about this level, but there was then a significant decline in the outlook in the second quarter forecast, which carried on into the third quarter forecast, both showing a deficit forecast of around £2 million. However, the fourth quarter outcome shows an improvement back to much closer to the original budget figures. Income is in line with the budget. The changes come in the expenditure items. There are overspends of £275,000 on management costs, £200,000 on service charge costs, and £499,000 on routine maintenance, and these are explained in the report. The improvement in the bottom line figure as compared to quarter three comes from two factors. One is a reduction in depreciation in line with reduced capital expenditure, and I'll talk about the capital in a minute. The second factor is a change in policy which took place during the year to capitalise major void work rather than considering it as revenue. The items which are being capitalised now are major fixtures such as kitchens and bathrooms, so they are fixed asset items. This was begun in the third quarter and shows as capital spend not split of £619,000, and that was in the third quarter report. There's further capitalisation in the fourth quarter of £915,000, which brings the total capitalised to £1.534 million. The fourth quarter capitalisation is the principal reason behind the movement on the routine maintenance element of the revenue account between the third and fourth quarter of a reduction of £860,000. Moving on to the capital programme, the budget for the year was 21 million and the actual spend was 13 million. The slippage of 8 million is largely in respect of the new build programme, and this will be carried forward into the current year. So the recommendations for this report are, just got to find them, sorry. Just a moment.
I've got them here if it helps.
Yes, please, if you wouldn't mind.
So there's three. 3.1 is approve the use of the strategic reserve to cover the HRA deficit of 1.2 million. 3.2 to note the separation of the leaseholder reserve of £26,000 from strategic reserves. And 3.3 to approve the carry forwards of 8.2 million from 2024-25 capital programme into 2025-26.
Thank you. I would like to propose those recommendations.
And can I have a seconder? Councillor Winch. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Any questions from Cabinet members on this paper? Councillor Winch.
Am I correct in my assumption that our change in capitalisation policy, which seems really logical to me, is going to significantly benefit this year's numbers as well.
Yes, that's correct. The budget was set on the previous policy.
Okay, go ahead.
I won't ask the follow-up, which is by roughly how much, but we could have a look outside of this. But it would be interesting to know the order of magnitude that might make, just so we know going forward.
Any other questions from Cabinet members? If not, Councillor Whitehead, Councillor Scarf, any questions from your side? Councillor Scarf.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, page 113. Just wanted to understand a little bit more. What are the £100,000 compensation payments? Are they money that we paid to tenants for non-compliance with repairs, or quite where does that one come from, please?
Deborah Fenton, thank you.
Thank you for the question. So the £100,000 relates to compensation for disrepair claims and complaints. Also like to add that we do have now a disrepair surveyor, so we have seen a reduction in those payments based on what we paid out last year, which I think from memory was over 200,000. I'd have to get the right figure, so it's going in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whitehead, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It concerns me in terms of the two revised papers that came out. I think one came out half an hour after I raised some questions in the opposition briefing, which was to do with the miswording, and then the table came out about 24 hours later after I raised questions about the numbers in that table. But I think there's still quite a few. If you go to page 212, which is basically the sort of background explanation to these numbers, I thank the Cabinet member for explaining. It says the Q4 improvement is due to the capitalisation of costs, which I didn't really understand, although I thought it might be major voids. But anybody reading this without hearing the explanation will, I think, be a bit confused. The section 3 on the top right still talks about position significantly improving from a 3 million deficit. So although the schedule's changed, the wording hasn't. There just seems to be a number of sort of errors and omissions in here. So it says interest payable is 754 higher, whereas it's 724 higher. And the bottom left refers to based on performance from April to December, because it's a Q3 forecast rather than a Q4 forecast. I just wondered if the Cabinet member felt she was really given sufficient time to review and sign off these papers before they were made public.
I think this report was prepared in a short time. There's a lot going on in the finance department at the moment, and I reviewed it when I could, and obviously the people in the department reviewed it as they could, but it's not, I'd accept it's not the best review that's ever been done.
Yeah, just had a couple of questions on the capital, because we're given the benefit of the forecast at Q3, which is produced in January after 9 months of experience, and then we obviously get the outturn, which is looked at, I guess, in April, May, when everything has been finalised. But there are some quite big movements on capital forecasts between January and April. So, for example, IC projects budgeted at 343. They thought it before 14 in Q3, and then it turns out at 277. Or major voids went up from 619 in Q3 to 1.534 million in Q4, and there's quite a few variances really between Q3 and Q4. I just wondered really why we couldn't get a better handle on capital until the end of the year.
I think I need to refer that question to Jenny, please.
The IT movement was due to Total Mobile being pushed back. That project was pushed back further. It was actually due to a finance delay. We in finance held up the start of that project. I can't remember the other ones that you picked up, but I think we have had some timing issues on those, and also we had a change in the finance partner in capital. So there was a bit of a change over time during Q3 for that.
Anything else, John?
I suppose the only final question is on the new build programme, where it talks about Paddock House, 2.3 million, and Lorraine Way, 607,000 underspend. Am I right in thinking that's not strictly an underspend, but rather a delay in spending on the project?
Yes, it is. Sorry, in my notes I have got delayed underspend, so I think it was a change in wording for the report. Apologies for that.
Okay. So I can now open this item up for debate. Anyone like to contribute to the debate? Councillor Winch, thank you.
Whenever I get the latest HRA figures, I immediately go down to see what's happening on the deficit. And in this case, there was a £1 million improvement versus the last time I'd seen it, which I think that's the first time I've ever seen that. So I was really pleased to see that. And I think the decision that we've made on capitalising major voids and things like kitchens, bathrooms and things is a very sensible thing to do and will help the numbers over the medium term. And in fact, now our reserves at the end of this year will now be 6.1 million. So the immediate crisis that I was expecting at the next budget has been pushed back. There's still a lot to do and there's still a lot being done. I am a bit concerned that there's too many numbers bouncing around, and that we look at the last forecast and that there's quite big discrepancies. I'm still not really fully understanding the interest payments that still bounce around. So we've got a 200k difference versus the last numbers. Depreciation, I understand at end of year there's another exercise, there's a end of year exercise, but there's a 400k difference, but that's on top of other differences. So it's really difficult to get a handle on exactly what's going on sometimes. But overall, the position is positive. It's the most optimistic I've been by a long way looking at the numbers that we've got. So I think we are seeing significant improvements.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Warboys.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'd just like to make a couple of general points. That first of all, this represents a huge amount of work to produce a credible financial budget for the in what is a very difficult business plan that's been created by successive governments. But at the second point, I think this represents a huge amount of work over the last couple of years in I think the best word is modernising the work that's done in HRA, and in order to bring us into a situation where we're almost going to have in real time the state of our physical buildings, the work done for our residents, the voids and the completion of work. And that work is doing a huge amount to sort of use the money as efficiently and getting the best value possible.
Thank you, Councillor Warboys. Anyone else? If not, then I'll just some words from the chair. The table papers include an update to paragraph 4.6, which talks about the continued lobbying the government for a new HRA settlement, and we look forward to the spending review tomorrow. There may be some news in there about the government's aspirations for building council homes. We hope so. But we realise, I think, that we're incredibly constrained by the financial position of our HRA. We would like to do more, but we can't at the moment because of the financial constraints. So we look to the government to ease those, and if the government truly wants to deliver affordable homes in the numbers they want to do, that can only be done when councils are building or acquiring homes, and we can't do that at the moment. So we hope for some positive news tomorrow or in the future. But if there's no further contributions to the debate, we can move to the vote. I have read the recommendations out already, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and I will now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That's 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Okay, we now move on to, just to say thank you to the officers for their help with those finance items. We now move on to item 11. This is paper MCA/25/5, the Q4 Mid-Suffolk Performance Report, and we've got Sarah Wilcock and Joe Hobbs to support this item. So I will now introduce this report as the relevant Cabinet member. This report provides an overview of the Council's performance for Q4, and this is January to March this year, not the dates in the report. This report is for noting only, but of course it does provide an important function in terms of monitoring and measuring our performance against the Mid-Suffolk Plan and our strategic priorities. Now, in previous times when these reports have come, I always seem to be reporting on changes to the format, and we do have some again for this quarter, but I think we're now at a point where the report format is settled, and we now have 5 columns of data for each performance indicator. So you can read back over the past year, 5 quarters, the past year and the previous quarter, and do a direct comparison with the same quarter in the previous year. And I think that's helpful. There's a further addition to the report, which is a narrative appendix, and that contains some case studies and stories of impact. Essentially what this does is bring the report to life. The officers, I think, would like some feedback on this addition to the report and whether members think that is a valuable addition. I do think it is myself. So can I thank the officers Claire Reid, Joe Hobbs and Sarah Wilcock for their work on this report. I'll just highlight a couple of things. In terms of the key performance indicators, there are 106 performance indicators. There's only 2 which are at red, there are 10 at amber, and there are 40 at green, and the other 54 which are not red, amber or green are data only numbers. There is a reduced number of red key performance indicators, particularly in relation to the tenant satisfaction measures. And then the town vacancy rates are now at the lowest since 2022. It's been the vacancy rates in the town centre have been from 13 to 18%, and they're now down at 9%. So that is a really positive thing. Just in terms of the red flags, the things that we're still concerned about, there were no affordable homes built or acquired during the quarter, but of course in the previous quarter there was a substantial number of 38 delivered, which was double the target. And then the other red flag is that the tax collection rate is 98.27%, but our target is 100%, so we are just below that, and there's some of the tenant satisfaction KPIs are still showing as underperforming, but we have made some really good improvements to the year, and we continue to improve. So I'm happy to propose that we note this report, and can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Weller, thank you. Do we have any questions on this report? And I will attempt to answer them with the officer's support. Any questions from Cabinet members? If not, Councillor Whitehead, Councillor Scarf, any questions from you? Councillor Scarf.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Page 132 also has a red flag, which is the proportion of emergency response repairs completed within the target timescale, which is 24 hours. The note that's prepared on that, and I see we have moved in a more positive direction in quarter four, says that the repair data has some inconsistency that you're aware of. However, with the rollout of the new job management system in the next few months, our performance reporting should be more in line with the targets that we have set ourselves. So, how does that work? Because I mean, obviously, the recording of that will be better with the new job management system. But how does that make sure that we constantly improve our response time? I'd just be interested to know exactly how we classify what's an emergency response repair and how we kind of deal with that system. If we could have some further clarification, thank you.
Okay, I might have to ask an officer to answer that. Is that from Deborah? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So in terms of how we establish whether it's an urgent, routine or a standard repair, there is set legislation around that which we follow. In terms of getting it right for our customers, at the moment we've had some teething issues with regards to getting the data into the system. We know that that's only a temporary issue because we've got our new total mobile job management system coming online, and when that comes online, it's automated. So the issue isn't actually once we've got the job in, getting it allocated to a trades person isn't the issue. It's how we actually get the data into the system, which has been the issue.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whitehead, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Page 129 it talks about the number of households in temporary accommodation, and the number over the 4 quarters seems fairly steady. So I just wondered, what is the churn there? Or are we looking at basically permanent people in temporary accommodation, or is there a churn within those numbers?
So there is a churn in temporary accommodation, and what we're doing is we're constantly trying to make sure that our clients who are in temporary accommodation are actually moved to a permanent, more suitable solution, such as they go through our choice-based letting system, or we refer them and they go through the private rented sector.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Claire, Jo and Sarah for producing the report. And I'm really pleased that we've kind of agreed on a standardised model now, because my interventions on this report previously have been to ask for exactly that, so that we can make comparators between between reporting periods, which is great. And I'm almost loath to ask my question, having said that, because it's really good to see so many green ticks all over it. But I do wonder whether or not, which is obviously incredibly positive, but in terms of maintaining those green ticks, I'm wondering whether or not we can be content now that those areas are ones that are sustainably green. And if we are content about that, is there something about being more ambitious with our KPIs to improve our performance?
I think when you look down the list of targets, potentially some of those are up for, need to be reviewed. But I'll ask Joe to come in on that point.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, that is something that we are looking at now. Now we've kind of got to a certain point where we do have that kind of seared green. We are discussing with different service areas whether those targets become more challenging, if we're doing well, to see whether we can try and find improvements. So that is a review we're currently doing with the services across the council.
Just a supplementary on that, are the targets, do they come from the directorates or do they come from your team sort of in dialogue with the directorates?
Yes, there are a mixture because some are set by government, so we're reporting on those national targets. But otherwise, it is definitely a discussion with the teams. So although we're kind of there to place that challenge and kind of see how we can make improvements across, to facilitate those within services, we fundamentally need them to be realistic targets that are going to be something that teams can work to. So it's definitely a conversation, but an encouraging conversation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor White, did you have any further questions?
Yes, thank you. It's to do with the housing again on page 129. So we've got targets, for example, safe houses, safe homes, I think the target's 80%. Landlord listening to views and acting on them, 60%. And landlords making a positive contribution to neighbourhoods, 67%. They're the targets. But if you actually switch those on, to turn them upside down, or on their heads, if you like, are we really happy that, for example, we're saying that, are we happy that 1 in 5 of our tenants don't feel we provide a safe home, 2 out of 5 don't feel we listen to their views and act on them, and 1 in 3 don't think the council makes a positive contribution to the neighbourhood? It just seems, are those targets a bit low?
Deborah Fenton, thank you.
Thank you for your question. So, of course, no, we are not satisfied as a housing directorate, and we were always looking to improve the tenant satisfaction measures. I mean, I have to say, the tenant satisfaction measures are always very difficult because they're asked to a group of tenants generically who may not have necessarily had an opportunity to use the services we offer. That said, to give you an example of some of the improvements we're making, so if you look at the positive contribution statistic, we have a programme running of making neighbourhood improvements, which is run by David White's team, and we put in a substantial amount of revenue and capital into that, and the projects within that are actually chosen by our tenants. So things will improve, but I think it's fair to say that to start from where we sort of were last year to get to good or great does take about 18 months to 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? If not, go ahead.
Just one bit of clarification, and that's on page 133. An action to deliver, it says the Needham HQ site completion anticipated in April 25. Can we confirm that the site has now been sold and we no longer own it?
I'll ask Emily Attack to take that item.
Thank you. So that was the target completion date for the sale as agreed. Unfortunately, the purchaser has had a problem with its funding, and so we've had to remarket the site, so we will delay the completion. The legal pack, however, and all of the due diligence has been completed, and so we are ready to progress with the new purchaser once that position has been finalised.
Thank you for that clarification. If no further questions, then we can move to debate on this item. If anyone would like to contribute to the debate. Councillor Winch.
First of all, just thanks to officers for putting this together. I think this is starting to become a really useful document. One of the things I most like about it is the trend, because when you just get a number, it's a little bit of a so what do I do with that, whereas you can see it changing over time. I would like to point out that the housing numbers are actually really on the up. I know we've had a few questions and we've sort of picked on the sort of the emergency one's probably the weakest number in there. But if I look at the housing regulatory KPIs, we've got overall satisfaction with the service in a year has moved from 65% to 73%. Satisfaction with overall repairs service from the landlord over the last 12 months from 61% to 75%. And we have had an historic issue going back years with our complaints process, and that's moved from 26% to 46%. So, okay, still relatively low percentage, but you can see a huge change going on, and I think there's an enormous amount that the housing team have been putting in place over the last couple of years, and we've been thinking, well, when are we going to see the result of that in the numbers? And I think we're starting to see that in the numbers. The other thing I wanted to mention that I found really interesting in here is the table of all the grants, and when you realise all the grant activity that's going on and the match funding of those grants, there's a huge amount of it just gives you an insight into the huge amount of work that's going on. Sometimes it doesn't get the headlines. But thanks very much for this report.
Thank you. Anyone else? So if not, I will just read the recommendation and we'll move to the vote. So the recommendation is 3.1, to note the performance for quarter 4 for 24-25, including the key performance indicators that are shown as red in the status and the commentary around these. And I will now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That's 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the officers for their work on that item. So we now move to item 12, which is exclusion of the public, which term includes the press. And this is to consider whether, pursuant to Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public should be excluded from the meeting for the business specified below on the grounds that if the public were present during this item, it is likely that there would be disclosure to them of exempt information as indicated against the item. Now, the author of the report proposed to be considered in Part 2 of the agenda is satisfied that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So can I have a proposer and a seconder that we move into closed session? Councillor Winch proposing and Councillor Weller seconding. Thank you. So we'll now vote by a show of hands. All those in favour of exclusion of the public, which includes the press. Okay, that's 6 votes, so that is carried, and we will now stop the live stream.